take a look at this beautiful website. It is all hand-coded with ReactJS using a CSS framework called Tailwind. It is carefully and professionally designed to work in all devices. What about this beautiful Netflix clone? Don't you like this amazing React dashboard application? Take a look at this updated professional ReactJS portfolio website. So, won't it be super amazing if you knew exactly how to design and code any of this website from scratch? Here exactly is where I come in. Hi, welcome and thank you so much for your interest in my new ReactJS course for beginners. My name is Ehizix and I'm going to be your instructor in this course. In this course, we will start from scratch to learn and understand the basic concept of React. At the end, you will be well equipped to build complex web applications using ReactJS. We are going to start by installing the necessary tools that is needed to work with ReactJS. And after that, we will go ahead to create our first React application. So, you have nothing to worry about, simply because I will hold your hands and walk you through the fundamentals to the final point of mastering ReactJS. And just like Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. My goal in this course is to explain ReactJS simply so that everyone understands it well enough. Therefore, we are going to treat all the basic concepts of React, including advanced topics such as hooks. Indeed, it is going to be a complete series. And at the end of this course, you will be well equipped to build complex web applications like the Netflix clone, React dashboard application, food recipe application, and a top-notch professional ReactJS portfolio website, which you can use to showcase your jobs to your clients or to your employers, including your families and friends. Without further ado, join me and let's get started. What exactly is React and why would we use it? ReactJS is a declarative, efficient, and flexible JavaScript library for building fast and interactive user interfaces. I want you to underline these key points: declarative, JavaScript library, and user interfaces. Before we proceed, I want to correct an impression. ReactJS is not a framework. It is a library, and the purpose for which this library was created is to build interactive user interfaces, which simply implies rendering the view and making sure the view is in sync with the state. That exactly is the only thing it does, and it does it perfectly fine. Therefore, React do not have a built-in solution for handling HTTP calls, routing, and other functionalities. However, we can handle all of these functionalities by installing external libraries. For example, if you want to implement a button click to redirect you from component A to component B, you have to install an external library called React Router DOM. Another important point is that ReactJS is declarative. And this paradigm simply implies you tell React what you want by writing code. And with the help of React DOM library, React will efficiently update and render just the actual component when your state changes. Alright, so React will help abstract away all the complexities and make it easier for you to create interactive and complex UI. And now the question is, why would we learn React, and what exactly is the advantage in the tech industry? Point number 1 is market demand. When you check out the Google trend, you will realize that ReactJS is dominating the tech industry in terms of library or framework for building user interfaces. So, if you want to expand your opportunity as a front-end developer, ReactJS is one of the best tools you can add to your toolbox. Point number 2 is high performance. ReactJS uses some clever techniques to minimize the number of costly DOM operations that is required to update the UI, which in turn allow the developers to create web applications that can change data over time without having to reload the page. And please take note of that. Alright, so it allows the developers to create web applications that can change data over time without having to reload the page. Let me quickly give you a metaphor. Take, for example, one of your friends posted his picture on Facebook. So you go ahead to open up the picture and then give the picture a like. Immediately you give the picture a like, the like count will be incremented, even without having to reload the page. And that is one big advantage of ReactJS. Okay, so it's kind of reacts to changes, but though it is not fully reactive in terms of communication with database. But with the help of Redux and other state management tools, you can have application built with React to be completely reactive. Point number 3 is strong engineering team. React is created and maintained by Meta. Therefore, when a company like Meta uses React to create and manage their own product, you can be rest assured that ReactJS is not going to die anytime soon. However, some of the biggest applications in the world were built with ReactJS. Applications such as Netflix, PayPal, Facebook, Instagram, Dropbox, and many more. So in this course, Netflix is one of the applications that we are going to build from scratch to the final stage of deployment. And of course, learning how to build this project will be a huge plus for you. Sounds good, right? Beautiful. Another advantage is its large community and popularity. ReactJS has a very huge community. So whenever you run into trouble, you have thousands of articles and library on the internet that will help you out. So you can search it out on Stack Overflow, W3 School, and many more. Technically, application built with React follows the component-based architectural approach, which simply implies components are one of the basic building blocks of React application. And now the question is, what is a component? Don't worry, in the next lecture, we will discuss that in details. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. Components. Component is an isolated piece of UI that is composed to build complex user interfaces. In other words, it represents a part of the user interface. So, a traditional website can be broken down into the header component, body container, side nav, and the footer component. Alright, so let me make it clear now. Take a look at this portfolio website. And for sure, this is another big project that we are going to build in this course. Now, let's understand the structure and how it was built. This this portfolio website is broken down into smaller isolated segments called components, which includes the home component. And again, the home component is broken down into smaller parts, which includes the header component, the profile component, and lastly, the profile footer. And so we have the rest of the components, such as the About Me component, resume, testimonial, and the Contact Me component. So all of this nested component is wrapped up in a root component. Take note, the root component is the default component of every React application. So the responsibility of the root component is to serve as a container for every other component that will be created when building React application. As a matter of fact, I call this component the mother of all components. And by the way, that is my personal opinion. So when you take a look at it closely, you will realize that each of these components defines only a section of the user interface. And all of this section is then put together to form the entire application. Technically, if we want to represent this application on a tree of components, we are going to have at the top the app component, which is the root component, right? So below, we are going to have the home component, and nested within the home component are the header, profile, and the profile footer component. And then we have the About Me component, resume, testimonial, and Contact Me component. So in summary, component allows us to break down our application into a smaller encapsulated segments, which can then be composed to make more complex user interface. It's as simple as that. Take note, as of the time of recording, application like Facebook is got over 30,000 components. So, the size of the application determines the number of components to be used. One good thing about components is that components are reusable. So in ReactJS, a reusable component is a piece of UI that can be used in various parts of the application to build more than one UI instance. So in a simple term, it means that one component can be used with different properties to display different informations. Alright, so this is all for now. In the next lecture, we will proceed with the setup and installations. Stay focused and always take care. In this lecture, we will go ahead to install the necessary tools that is needed to work with ReactJS, such as Node.js, Visual Studio Code, and any browser of your choice, but preferably Google Chrome. So quickly head on to nodejs.org, and here is the address. So right here, we are going to download and install the latest stable release. I already have it on my machine, but for teaching purpose, I have to download and install it alongside with you for clarity. So when you observe the screen, you are going to see two different versions. So please do not download this version. You know why? It is simply because it comes with extra complexities that you may not be able to figure out. So let's proceed to download the LTS. And here is it, at the left side of the screen. I'm just going to click to download. The reason we are installing Node.js is to make use of the npm package to install third-party libraries. Download successful. Open. Let's continue. You can decide to read the software license agreement, but for me, I'm just going to continue. I agree. Let's continue. And lastly, we have to hit on the install button. And here is it. Of course, if you're Mac, this would definitely pop up. So you just have to key in your password. And if you're on Windows, it is going to be a straightforward installation. So hit on install software. Node.js installation is ongoing. And this would definitely take a while, so I just have to fast forward the lecture. Node.js installed successful. Let's close it down. Alright, so you can decide to keep it or to move it to the bin. But for me, I'm just going to keep it. Now let's open up the terminal. Press hold the command key on your Mac and then tap the space key. So we are going to search for terminal. And here is it. And over here, we have to check the version of Node that we just installed. Node-V. Hit the enter key on your keyboard. And this is the version over here. Close down the terminal. The next in line is to install the code editor. And the code editor I'm going to use in this course is the VS Code. Feel free to use any code editor of your choice, but for me, the VS Code is my favorite. And I highly suggest you stick with VS Code so that you will be able to follow along with me in the future. Scroll down and let's have it download. At the left edge of the screen, we have for Windows, and at the right edge of the screen, we have it for Mac. So I just have to download for Mac, and if you're on Windows, you also have to download for Windows. The download would definitely take a while, so I just have to fast forward the lecture. Download successful. Open. And here is it. You just have to launch it. And that's it. The VS Code is opened. So at my end, you are going to see the recent project. Don't worry, this may not appear at your end simply because you haven't opened any project with VS Code. So please make sure to download Google Chrome. And of course, you should have it by now. This is all for now, and in the next lecture, we will go ahead to create our first React application. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. In this lecture, we are going to create our first React application. So quickly head on to reactjs.org, and here is the address. Click on Docs. Here is it. Alright, so at the right edge of the screen, you are going to see the tab. So right at the tab, you have to click on Create a new React app. And here is it. So the first thing we are going to do is to basically generate a boilerplate of a React application, which comprises of the libraries, the initial files and folders to run a simple React boilerplate application. Scroll down and let me show you. To create a new React app, we have to follow these instructions. The npx command would be used to create a new React app without having to install it on our system. Haven't understood all this? Let's proceed to create a new React app. Head on to the desktop And over here, we are going to create a root directory, React course. Right click, hit on new folder. React-course. Hit on the enter key. Take note, when naming your project, always use a descriptive name that betells the purpose of the project, so you will be able to recognize it in the future. Sounds good? Beautiful. So quickly open up the VS Code. Let's close down the sample page. Now, the next in line is to drag and drop the folder down into the VS Code. And again, close down the sample page. Maximize the VS Code. Let's open up the VS Code integrated terminal. And I'm going to do Ctrl+backtick. Can you see? The backtick is located at the top left corner of the keyboard, right below the escape key. And as well, if the shortcut doesn't work for you, all you have to do is to go to the top and then Terminal, New Terminal. You click on it, it opens up for you. And right at the terminal, we have to create a new React app. npx create-react-app. The React application will be installed in a directory called client. And also, you can decide to change the name of this directory, but I highly recommend you stick with the convention client. Simply because ReactJS has to do with the front end, which implies the UI part of the application. You can as well name it front end, like this. Okay, so this is also conventional. Alright, but for me, I'm just going to stick with the convention client. Hit on the enter key to proceed. React installation is ongoing. And this would definitely take a while, so I just have to fast forward the lecture. ReactJS installed successful. To proceed, we have to step into the client directory where we installed the ReactJS. So I'm just going to do cd client. Hit on the enter key to proceed. The next in line is to start up the front-end dev server. And I'm going to do npm start. Hit on the enter key to get it fire up. And by the way, npm simply means Node Package Manager. On the screen is the React landing page. And by default, it is running on localhost port 3000. So now we are done with the installation. In the next lecture, we will begin to unveil the React boilerplate. This is all for now, and see you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. In this lecture, we are going to unveil the React boilerplate. Command B to open up the Explorer. And as well, we have to close down the terminal. So you have to click on the X icon over here at the right edge of the screen. But for me, I'm just going to do Ctrl+backtick. Open up the client directory. Here is it. Let's proceed with the package.jsm file. Here is it. The package.jsm file is where all the dependencies that concerns the front end will sit on. And over here, we have React version 18.2 installed. Right below, we have the React DOM. The React DOM is used to work with the document object module in the browser. And here we have the React script and the web vitals. And down here, we have the script. And in the previous lecture, we did npm start to start up the front-end dev server. Right below, we have the build. When we do npm run build, it is going to build up the static assets for deployment. So when we want to deploy application on the server, we would definitely make use of the build. And here we have the test and the eject. The eject is necessary when you want to eject from create a React app and customize your web pack. And here we have the configuration for ESLint, which helps to highlight some possible errors in your code. And lastly, we have the compatible browser list. Done with the package.json file, let's proceed with the package log. Open. The package log helps for steady installation of your dependencies. Though we do not have any business over here, but we also have to talk about it. And here we have the readme.md file, which helps for documentation. Take for example, you are done building your application, so you can come to the readme.md file to document the processes involved. So let's quickly unveil the folders. Open up the public. Right in the public directory, we have the index.html, the logo, and the manifest.json file. The manifest.json file is used for progressive web app. And that for now is not relevant to the purpose of this course. So as a beginner, we have to focus on the index.html. And here is it. This is all for now, and see you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. In this lecture, we are going to understand the flow of React as a single page application, which implies how ReactJS works under the hood. Quickly open up the index.html. Command B to pop up the Explorer. Client, public, and here is it, index.html. Let's go ahead to open up the index.js and the app.js. Proceed to the source, which is the src, index.js, and here is it. Lastly, we have to open up the app.js. Command B to close down the Explorer. Let's begin with the index.html. Scroll down. I want you to take note of this div with the ID of root. It is extremely important. As a matter of fact, this div with the ID of root serves as a container for the entire application. Let's head on to the index.js. The index.js is the entry point of every React application. So for best explanation, before we proceed, we are going to downgrade the application to React 17. And when I'm done with the explanation, we are going to bring it back to React 18. So right on lines 2, highlight the client, wipe it off. Over here, highlight, wipe it off. And as well, we have to highlight again, Command X to cut. Place a comma right here and paste. So we have to take off the semicolon, the bracket, and this other bracket over here. So we have to remove the root. We are going to use the React DOM to access it. Copy, paste it here. And next, we just have to take off the strict mode. Beautiful. Now we have succeeded in downgrading the application to React 17. Okay? All I want you to do in this lecture is to sit quietly and pay maximum attention to my explanation. So let's proceed to understand how ReactJS works under the hood. At the top, we have React imported from React module. Below, we have React DOM from React DOM module. The React DOM helps to tie the low-level DOM of HTML with the high-level DOM of React. And also, the React DOM has a method called render. And the render method takes in two parameters. The first parameter is the element, which in this case a React element to be rendered. The second parameter is a vanilla JavaScript, which is document.getElementById. And it says, hey, I want to bind with the DOM element in the HTML. Precisely a certain DOM element with the ID of root. Okay? And this DOM element with the ID of root is found right within the HTML file. Here is it. So what React does is to inject the first parameter into the DOM element with the ID of root. So in simplicity, whatever you have here as the first parameter will be passed down into the root DOM node. It is going to be seated right within this div. And more importantly, the index.html is the only page that is saved on the browser in order to display whatever you pass in as the first parameter into the root DOM node. Alright, so this approach of rendering components on a single page and changing the DOM exhibits the single page behavior. And hence, we can say that ReactJS is used to build a single page application. Let me break it down. Back to the index.js. So over here, I'm going to take off the app component as the first parameter. Wipe it off. So I'm going to have a h1 tag. Right within the h1 tag, I'm going to do and now let's save the application to see what happens. Save. Boom. Can you see? The h1 tag is displayed on the browser. So when we inspect the element, right-click, inspect. Right here, you are going to see the index.html file, which is the only page that is saved on the browser. So let's try to open up the body. When you open up the body, you are going to see the div with the ID of root. So let's quickly open up this div. Can you see? The h1 tag is injected right within this div with the ID of root. It's as simple as that. Understood? Beautiful. Let's take it one more time. Alright, so whatever you have here as the first parameter will be injected right in between the div with the ID of root. And the div with the ID of root is located right here in the index.html. So the index.html is the only page that is saved on the browser in order to display whatever you injected in between the div. And that is why when you inspect the console, you are going to see the h1 tag in between the div with the ID of root. Best explanation. Teaching good? Beautiful. So again, go back to VS Code, index.js. So let's wipe it off and bring back the app component. And by the way, the app component is imported at the top. And when you save on the browser, boom, and you are going to see the landing page. So let's unveil the app.js. Back to VS Code, app.js. And over here in the app.js, we have a div with the class name of app. Okay? And we have a header. Here, we have the img tag that describes this logo over here that is continuously spinning on the screen. We have the p tag. Here is it. And lastly, we have the a tag. This is it right here. So right here, we have the body, and here is the div with the ID of root. Let's open it up. Can you see? When you open up the div with the ID of root, you are going to see another div with the class name of app. And here is it. Let's open up the div. We are going to see the header with the class name of app header. And here is it. Let's open up the header. So we have the rest of the content, such as the img tag, which describes the logo. We have the p tag. Can you see? And lastly, we have the a tag. So it's as simple as that. Let's quickly bring back the app to React 18. Index.js, and then we just have to undo. And now we have upgraded the app again to React 18. And it's exactly the same thing. The app component is over here as the first parameter, and it is going to pass through this line of code into the div with the ID of root. And here is it. And you should always recall that the div with the ID of root is found here in the index.html. And the index.html is the only page that is saved on the browser in order to display whatever content you injected in between this div. And that's it. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. In this lecture, we are going to understand GSS. So quickly head on to the app.js. Command P to pop up this little search box at the top. And then search for app.js. Here is it. If the shortcut doesn't work for you, all you have to do is to navigate to the Explorer and then open. Make sure to open up the client, src, and then here is it. Close down the Explorer. Beautiful. So right on the screen, we have a function that returns a piece of UI. So everything you see over here is called GSS. GSS simply stands for JavaScript XML. It is a syntax extension of JavaScript that is used to define the meaning and the structure of a web content. So this may look familiar with HTML, but it is not HTML. What you see on the screen is called GSS. And one of the differences between HTML and GSS is the class name attribute. In HTML, it is a class. And right here in GSS, it is a class name. Simply because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So all of this markup over here defines the landing page, which comprises of the logo, the p tag, and the a tag. Let me show you quickly. Back to VS Code. Here is the img tag that describes the logo. And here is it. Right below, we have the p tag. This is it right here. And lastly, we have the a tag. Here is it. Back to VS Code. So when I try to delete everything right within this div, we are going to experience a new behavior. So I'm going to highlight from the opening header tag to the closing header tag. Wipe it off. Save. This is the new behavior. The screen is blank, simply because we have deleted the GSS expressions that defines the landing page. Back to VS Code, and also we have to delete the div with the class name of app. We want to do everything from scratch. So here we are going to have a h1 tag, and then hello world. Save. On the browser, Here is it. How beautiful is this? So the H1 tag over here describes the hello world you see here on the browser. It's as simple as that. Go back to VS Code and let's continue. Now let me zoom in. Friends, here are the major key points that you have to keep in mind when using GSS. And all of these key points that I want to share with you are extremely important. Point number 1 is that you can only have one parent wrapper element in GSS. So when you do something like this, for example, let's have a H2 tag, and I'm going to do, my name is Edubaba. So this will definitely throw an error. When you save and check out the browser, you are going to see the complaint. And it says, adjacent GSS element must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. Which implies you cannot have GSS outside of another GSS. So the only way you can do this is to wrap up the entire GSS in a parent element. So let's have a div over here. And then we are going to highlight, hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, tap the up arrow key to move it in. And as you can observe, the error is gone. Let's keep the code clean. Beautiful. Check out the browser. Everything is working as expected. I love it. Come back. So this div over here serves as the parent element. So you cannot have GSS element outside of a parent GSS element. So when I do something like this, for example, when I have a div over here, it is going to throw exactly the same error. Adjacent GSS element must be wrapped up in an enclosing tag. So this simply implies all the GSS expressions must be wrapped up in a parent element. So for now, this div is used as the parent element. We just have to move it in like this. It's as simple as that. Point number 2. Class attribute in HTML is replaced with class name in GSS, simply because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So let's try to give this div a class name. So the class name is container. Save. On the browser, everything is working perfectly fine. So let's quickly inspect the console. Alt-I to open up the console. Can you see? Everything is fine. Back to VS Code. So let's try to replace the class name with class. Save. On the browser, here is the warning. Invalid DOM property, class. And it asked a question. Did you mean a class name? Yes, we mean a class name. So I have to go back and then save. Check it out. Let's refresh the console. Everything is working perfectly fine. Point number 3. For in HTML is replaced with HTML4 in JSS. And also, for is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So when we try to implement something like this, so right here, we are going to have a label, and let's specify the for attribute equal username. So this works for HTML. And when you try it out on JSS, we will definitely get some warning on the console. Invalid DOM property for. So come here. We have to change this for to HTML4. So this will resolve the problem. Save on the browser, refresh the console. Everything is fine. Point number 3. In JSS, the onClick and the tab index attributes will be written in comma case, which simply implies you capitalize the first letter of every word except for the first word. So let's assume we want to implement a button right here. And then we have to specify the onClick equal. If you notice, you will realize that the onClick is written in comma case. And as well, we set it to a curly bracket. So this exactly is how to implement the onClick in GSS. To recap, class in HTML is replaced with class name in GSS. For in HTML is replaced with HTML4 in GSS. The onClick event handler in GSS is written in comma case, and also it is set to a curly bracket. So over here, you can call any of the function that you defined in the application. I'm just going to wipe this off for now, because in the future, we are going to treat event handler in details. Wipe it off. And lastly, you cannot have GSS expressions outside the parent element. So all the GSS expressions that you are going to have when creating your UI is going to be wrapped up in one parent element. Okay, so we have to move it in. And that's it. This is all for now, and see you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. Now we are done with GSX, but it is extremely important you know these. If I want to place a comment on the GSS expressions, how do I do that? Take for example, I want to place a comment on the h2 tag. How can I achieve that in GSS? So the shortcut to do that is to precisely select the GSS element that you want to place a comment on. And in this case, I want to place a comment on the h2 tag. So you just have to select. Let me show you again. Select and then hold the command key on your keyboard, then tap the /. And this will precisely place a comment on the GSS expression that you selected. If you notice, you will realize that everything is wrapped up in a curly bracket. Okay, and right within the curly bracket, you will be able to use the multi-line comment. So this is the opening multi-line comment. Here is the closing multi-line comment. So in simple terms, in order to use comment in GSS, you have to wrap it up in a curly bracket. So when it is wrapped up in a curly bracket, ReactJS is going to treat it as JavaScript expressions. So you can now use the multi-line comment on it. So the same thing applicable if you want to remove the comment. Highlight, hold down the command key, tap the /. It's as simple as that. Even if you want to place a comment on the entire GSS, it is exactly the same process. So let's assume I want to place a comment on everything within the parent element. So I just have to highlight like this, hold down the command key, tap the /. It's as simple as that. And also, if you want to remove the comment, highlight, hold down the command key, hit the /. So this exactly is how comment works in GSS. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. Previously, we spoke about components and we learned that components are reusable and it can as well be nested inside another component. And now the question is, how do components translate to code in our application? The simplest way to define a component is to write a simple JavaScript function. In ReactJS, we have two types of components: functional component and class component. Functional components are JavaScript functions that accept props as an argument and then return a valid GSS, which in actual sense is the markup that describes the UI. In simplicity, the syntax will look like this. This function is a valid React functional component, simply because it accepts a single prop object argument with data and returns a React element. So, if we are to do the same thing using the class component, the syntax will look like this. From React point of view, the above two components are equivalent, but only that class component is usually a regular ES6 classes that extends a component class from the React library. And it must have a render method that returns the JSS, which in turn describes the UI. However, in this course, we are going to stick with the functional component, simply because it is extremely easy to reason about. And also, class component is gradually fading away. Majority of the companies are now rewriting their application with functional component. So we definitely need to follow trends. Using the functional component, we do not need to worry about state, because with the help of hooks, we will be able to use the state and other React features without writing a class. And hooks was introduced in 2018 React conference. Take note, when naming your component, always use the Pascal naming convention, which implies you capitalize the first letter of every word. So, for example, home component will be written like this. When you name it like this, ReactJS will treat it as a DOM tag. Beautiful. Another important point is that a component code is usually written in a JavaScript file with a .js extension or .gss extension. But in this course, we will stick with the .js extension. For example, the home component will be written like this: home component.js. Alright, so this is all for now, and in the next lecture, we will go ahead to create our first React functional component. See you in the next lecture. Let's go ahead to create a functional component. To proceed, we have to create the components directory. Open up the client. Within the SRC, we have to right-click and then New Folder. And I'm going to call it Components. Notice that I used a plural word over here. It is simply because we are going to have so many components right within this components directory. So it should be a good practice to name it with plural word. Hit on the Enter key. And then, right within the components directory, we are going to create the components file. Right click on Components, hit on New File. Demo component.js. So friends, I want you to take note of the convention I used in naming this component. It is called the Pascal naming convention. It implies you capitalize the first letter of every word. And also, I want you to take note of the extension. And here is it, .js. Hit on the Enter key and let's proceed. Command B to close down the Explorer. So over here, we are going to create the functional component from scratch. So first, we have to import React from React module. And for now, this is optional. Alright, so in terms of code, components are simply JavaScript functions. And the name of this component is demo component. Functional component returns JSS markup, which describes the UI. We are going to have a div, and right within the div, we are going to have a h1 tag. And I'm going to do hello world. It's as simple as that. So now we have succeeded in creating our functional component. The next in line is to have it displayed on the browser. To have this component displayed on the web, the first thing we are going to do is to export the component. So here I'm going to do export default function, demo component. So having exported the function, we have to render the demo component right in the app.js. Command P to pop up the search box at the top, and we are going to search for app.js. And here is it. So here we are going to take 2 steps. Step 1 is to import the demo component. So over here, we have to import demo components from open and close single quotes, or you can as well use double quotes. So here we have to target the directory where the demo component is located. So for that, I'm going to do ./components/demo component. It's as simple as that. Having done that, we have to render this component right within the return statement. So what I'm going to do right now is to highlight from lines 9 to 13, wipe it off. So we have to render the demo component right in between this div with the class name of container. And then close it down. If we do not have children in between the tag, it will be so nice to use the self-closing tag. So I'm going to highlight the closing tag, wipe it off. Right within the square bracket, I'm just going to specify the /. So this is called the self-closing tag. Save on the browser, boom. Everything is working as expected. And here you see the hello world. Okay? Now we have successfully created the functional component and have it displayed on the web. Congratulations. This is all for now, and see you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. EX6 provides 2 different ways to export modules from a file, which include default export and the named export. When you observe the screen, you will realize that we exported this component as a default export. Alright, so default export allows us to export a module and specify any name to that module whenever you want to import it. So since we exported the demo component as a default export, over here, we will be able to name it anything. Alright, so let's take for example, I'm just going to wipe this off and then I'm going to do greet component. And here we also have to do the same. We have to render greet component. Check it out. Everything is working as expected. So this can only work when you make use of default export. Another important point that you have to keep in mind is that there is only a single default export per module. Okay, so over here, right in this component, we will not be able to have a default export anymore. You can only have one default export in a module. Sounds good? Beautiful. Now, the next in line is the named export. Named export are useful to export several values. And during the import, one will be able to use the exact same name to refer to the corresponding value. Let me show you quickly. So over here, if we want to use the named export, all we have to do is to highlight the default over here and then wipe it off. This has been transformed to named export. So when you save, on the browser, here is the complaint. It is trying to say that the greet component does not exist. Go back to VS Code, head on to the app.js, and then we have to use the exact same name of the module. And over here, the name of the module is demo component. Head on to the app. So to work with the named export, we have to wrap up the exact same name in a curly bracket. And right here, we are going to have a curly bracket. Then I'm just going to wipe this off. Right within the curly bracket, we have to precisely import the module by its name. And the name is demo component. Having done this, we also have to import the exact component over here. Highlight and wipe it off, and then I'm going to do demo component. Check it out on the browser. Everything is working as expected. I love it. Alright, so to recap, when using the default export, you would be able to specify any name to it when you want to import it. And you can only have one default export per module, compared to the named export where we can be able to export several values from a module. And during import, one will be able to use the exact same name to refer to the corresponding value. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. We cannot talk about props without mentioning components. And earlier on in the previous lectures, we learnt that component enables you to split the user interfaces into independent and reusable segments. So right now, I want you to think about each segment in isolation. The question is, if components are separated from each other, how do we pass information from component A to component B? Here exactly is where props comes in. So, what exactly is props? Props stands for properties. It is an object that stores the value of an attribute of a tag. And also, props enables you to pass data from one component to another, precisely from a parent component to a child component. Take note of this key point. Props are immutable, which simply implies its value cannot be changed. Haven't understood all this? Head on to VS Code and let's practicalize it quickly. Let's quickly get rid of the h1 tag. Proceed to the app component. And over here, I just have to change the class name to app, simply because I want to make use of the default CSS file. Another important point that I want you to take note of is that props can be passed to a component via JSS attributes. Take for example, we want to pass data from app component down into the demo component. So, to do that, first, we have to specify the attribute. So let's assume we want to pass a name props. So here the attribute is going to be name, assign it a value, Daisy. So this is the attribute. Here is the value. And all of this put together is referred to as props. Okay, so having done this, we have succeeded in passing props into the demo component. But when you check out the browser, nothing happens. So you cannot see anything on the browser. You know why? It is simply because we also have to receive the props right in the demo component. Back to VS Code, demo component. To receive the props is very simple. All we have to do is to take in props as an argument right within the function. So I'm going to do props. You can decide to change the name of the props to something else, but I highly suggest you stick with the convention props, because that is the convention that is widely used among developers. So having done this, we have succeeded in receiving the props right here in the demo component. Let me show you. So this props right here will be stored inside the props object. let me prove it to you. Come here, and then we are going to console log props. So we want to see the value that is stored inside this props object. Head on to the browser. Let's quickly inspect the console. Alt-I to open up the console. When you inspect the console, you will see an object. So let's quickly open up the object. Right here, we have in the object an attribute name with the value Daisy. So technically, we have received the props down into the demo component. So the next in line is to access the props value and have it displayed on the browser. So if we want to access the value of a props, we just have to target the attribute, and then the value would be displayed. Head on to VS Code and let's do that quickly. So right here, I'm going to specify a head1 tag because I want to do it right within the head1 tag. So ordinarily, I'm going to do props.name. On the browser, you are going to see props.name simply because it is being treated as text. So for this to work, here we have to take in the curly brackets and then highlight, Command X to cut, paste it here. So when you wrap it up in a curly bracket, the GSS parser will be able to recognize it as JavaScript expressions instead of a text. Save. On the browser, here we have Daisy. Alright, so let's quickly head on to VS Code and add more attributes to the component. Head on to the app component, and here we have the props as name. Now we are going to have another props as country, assign it a value, Brazil. Save. On the browser, you will definitely see Daisy on the screen. But when you inspect the console, you are going to see the name Daisy and the country Brazil. So let's quickly have it displayed on the browser. Back to VS Code, demo component. And then here I'm going to do props.country. Save. On the browser, and we got here Brazil. Alright, so let's make these more meaningful. Come here, right within the head1 tag, I'm going to do I am props.name from props.country. Save. On the browser, I am Daisy from Brazil. How beautiful is this? Alright, so let's continue. Back here, now we have successfully passed props from a parent component down into the child component. So to recap, when dealing with props, 3 steps are involved. Step 1 is to send the props through JSS attribute into the child component. And step 2 is to receive the props right within the parameter of a function. Okay, and after that, we have to display it on the browser. It's as simple as that. Okay, so now I want you to recall that components are reusable. Quickly head on to the app.js and let me teach you how to reuse this component. So to reuse this component, I'm just going to highlight and then duplicate it as many times as I like. On the browser, take a look. Now we have reused this component with props. This is one of the beauty of React that makes my head spin. So another important point is that reusable components can be reused with different properties to display different informations. Head on to VS Code and let's do that quickly. VS Code, and here, this attribute is also referred to as the property. So I want to change the value of the attribute. Here I'm going to do Michael, and Michael is from USA. Change the attribute here, Sahil, and Sahil is from India. And lastly, we are going to have myself, Idubaba, and the doobaba is from UK. On the browser, can you see that? So here we have Daisy from Brazil, Michael from USA, Sahil from India, and lastly, a doobaba from UK. So this exemplifies how reusable component works with probs. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. Props.children. When you look closely, you will observe that we are using self-closing tag for all of these components. You know why? It is simply because the components do not have children. In ReactJS, a component with children is always identified by an opening tag and a closing tag. And the children must be placed in between the enclosing tags. So let's say we want to add some couple of information about this guy, including his profile picture. Alright, so what I'm going to do first is to clear off the self-closing tag and then close it down with the actual closing tag. And here is it. So this is the closing tag that is used when the component has children. And in this case, here we are going to have a p tag. And right within this p tag, I'm going to do, and here we are going to have another p tag. And I'm going to do, so lastly, we are going to have a profile picture. So in order to work with images, first, we have to import that image. So there are several ways to do that. So I'm going to do Command B to open up the Explorer. So right within the SRC, we are going to create a new folder. And this will be called Images. So right within this Images folder, we are going to import the profile picture. So what I'm going to do right now is to maximize the VS Code. And here on my desktop, you are going to see the basic materials directory. Click to open. And by the way, this directory is right there on the description. And here is the profile picture. So I'm just going to drag it right into the images directory. Can you see? And here is the profile picture. Maximize the VS Code. Command B to close down the Explorer. And then also close down the profile picture. So right at the top, we have to import profile pics from. So we have to target the SRC. Right within the SRC, we have the images directory. And right within the images, we have to precisely target the profile picture. Profile pics.png. I think this is correct, right? So let's check it out quickly. Command B. Here we have profile pics.png. It is extremely correct. So scroll down and here we are going to have an img tag src equal this import over here. So we have to call this import. Copy, come here, paste. Close down the img tag. When you save and check out the browser, you are not going to see the children probs. You know why? It is simply because we also have to retrieve the children probs. Quickly head on to VS Code, demo component. So right here, we are going to retrieve the children probs. So let's do it right within the h2 tag, open and close curly bracket. So to retrieve the children probs, all we are going to do is probs.children. On the browser, here are the children. This is extremely awesome. To recap, open up the app.js and then whatever you have here in between the opening and closing tag is referred to as the children probs. And to retrieve the children probs, all you have to do is probs.children. It's as simple as that. Come back to the app component. And now the question is, what type of content is allowed for probs.children? The content passed to a component through props.children can include the following: undefined, null, boolean, number, string, React element, including an array. Okay? This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. Another important point that we have to take note of is that props are immutable. And that simply implies the value of a prop cannot be changed. Let me prove it quickly. Open up the demo component. And here we are going to try to reassign another value to the name attribute. So I'm going to do here props.name equal Angela. On the browser, the application breaks. Let's quickly inspect the console. Cannot assign to read-only property name. So props are read-only, which simply implies the value of a props that is sent from a parent component cannot be altered in the child component. And that is why when we tried to reassign another value to the name attribute, the application breaks. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Props destructuring. Destructuring was introduced in EXEs. It is a JavaScript feature that allows you to extract multiple pieces of data from an array or an object, and then assign them to their own variables. One of the beauty of destructuring is that it improves code readability. So, in functional component, there are two ways to destructure props, but we are going to go with the best option, which is to destructure props right inside the parameter of a function. Let's give it a try. So right within the parameter of this function, we have to wipe it off and then take in a curly bracket. So let's go back to the app. Here we have the attribute name and the attribute country, right? So come back. We have to precisely target that attribute. Name, comma, country, comma, children. Having performed destructuring, we have to access all the attributes directly. We do not need the props anymore. So I'm going to highlight all the occurrences of props dot and then hold down the command key, tap the letter D on your keyboard. D for dog. Like this. And then wipe it off. Press the escape key to disable the multi-cursor editing. Let's check out the browser. Can you see? Everything is working as expected. I love it. So, to recap, if you want to destructure props, it has to be done right within the parameter of a function. And to do that, first, you have to take in a curly bracket. And right within the curly bracket, you can then precisely target the name of the attribute. So what you should know is this. So here, if you make a mistake, for example, let's do something nasty over here. Let's spell the country like this. When you do this, okay, let's save on the browser. You are going to get a weird result. Look, the name is displayed on the screen, but the countries disappeared. Okay, so when performing destructuring, there is a need to precisely target the name of the attribute. So I'm just going to undo. Save. Boom. Everything is working as expected. I love it. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Earlier on in the previous lecture, we learned how to pass props from a parent component to a child component. And now the question is, Is it possible to pass props from child component to a parent component? And the answer is no. You cannot directly pass props from child to a parent component. But you can, however, pass a reference to a function as props to the child component. Sounds tricky, right? Let's quickly practicalize it so that you can understand it well enough. Open up the Explorer. Right within the component, we are going to create a new component, parent.js. And again, right within the component, we also have to create another component, child.js. Beautiful. Close down the Explorer. And then I have to also close down the demo and the app.js. So right within the parent component, I'm going to use the shortcut ROFC to generate ReactJS functional component. And again, if the shortcut is not working at your end, it is because you have not installed the snippet. To install the snippet, head on to the extensions. Click to open. So right here, we are going to search for ES7 React/Redux/GraphQL React-native snippet. And here is it. Click to open. And at my end, I have it installed already. And that is why you see over here the uninstall button. So at your own end, you just have to click the install button and then you will have it installed. Close it down. And as well, close down the extensions. And now the shortcut is going to work for you. Alright, let's continue. So right within the div, we are going to have a h1 tag. And here I'm going to do, this is parent component. Let's head on to the child.js. Here is it. And as well, we have to generate the ReactJS functional component. RFC and boom. Beautiful. Having done this, let's define a function right in the parent component and then pass that function as props into the child component. Parent component, and let's do it right here. Alright, so I'm going to do function greet parent. So right within this function, we are going to have a let dialog. And right here, we want to display welcome parent. So the next in line is to pass this function as props down into the child component. Let me show you quickly. So at the top, we have to import child from ./child component. So let's quickly render the child component. Child, close it up with the soft closing tag. Beautiful. Having done this, we can now proceed to pass the function as props down into the child component. To do that, we have to specify the attribute and then assign it to a value. But this time, the value is going to be this function. Highlight and then copy. Come here, paste. So this is the attribute and here is the value. And all of these is called props. Understood? Beautiful. So when you do this, we have succeeded in passing this function as props down into the child component. So having done this, we have to render the parent component right in the app.js. Command P to pop up the set box at the top. And then I'm going to search for app.js. And here is it. So we just have to place a comment on all of these tabs. Highlight, hold down the command key, hit the /. So at the top, we have to import parent component from ./component/parent. Right below, we have to render parent. Close it up with the soft closing tag. Save. Go back to the parent component. So now we have succeeded in passing props into the child component. The next in line is to receive it right in the child component. Child. And to do that, we just have to take in props as an argument. And then when you console log props on the browser, Alt Command I to open up the console. And we also have to open up the props object. And here is the attribute greet with the function greetParent as its value. Go back. So the purpose of this lecture is to call the function that we defined in the parent component right here within the child component. So on click of a button in the child component, we want to be able to call this function. Come back to the child. Let's have a button right here. And right here, we have to specify the on click. So on click of the button, we want to be able to call the function greetParent. And of course, you know that the function greetParent is already stored in the props object. So now I'm going to do props.greet. So when you do this, save on the browser. This is the parent component. And here is the child component. So on click of this button, we want to invoke the function that was defined in the parent component. Click. Can you see that? Welcome parent. To recap, we defined the function here in the parent component. And after that, we then pass the function as props down into the child component. So whenever we do props.greet, it is going to retrieve the value that is passed into the attribute, which in this case, the function greetParent. And finally, we triggered the button by specifying the on click. So on click of this button, this function right here will get fire up. So what exactly is the benefit of doing this? Alright, so the advantage of doing this is that it helps to improve performance. So when building a real-world application, chances are you may run into a situation where you want to make use of a function in different components. Alright, so let me show you quickly. Open up the Explorer and then right within the component, right-click, new file. And I'm going to call this user.js. Close down the Explorer. Generate the ReactJS functional component. So right within this component, we also want to make use of this same function. Okay? So what I'm going to do right now is to first import the user component from ./user. We have to render it over here. Close it up with the self-closing tag. I'm going to specify the attribute greet and then assign it a value, which in this case, the function greetParent. Head on to the users component and then we have to receive the props. So right now, I just have to go back to the child and copy this button. Come here, paste. Let's check it out on the browser. Here is the button from the child component, and here is the button from the user component. So when we click the button in the user component, can you see? We are calling the same function that is defined in the parent component. And also, when we click the child component, it works exactly the same. So if you are building application and you want to make use of the same function in different components, the best option is to pass that function as props into the component that needs it. It's as simple as that. Let's go back to the child. Another important point that I want you to take note of is how to pass parameter when calling a function defined in the parent component from the child component. So this is extremely important. As a matter of fact, it appears mostly as an interview question. So now let's pay attention on how to do that. Alright, so the simplest way to pass parameter from the child to the parent component is by implementing the arrow function syntax. We are going to have an arrow function, come here, specify it like this. So with this, we will be able to pass any number of parameter to the greet function. Let me show you quickly. So right here, within this function, we are going to take in string. So right here, I'm going to do I am child. Okay, so we want to pass this as parameter down into the greet parent function. Come here. We have to incorporate it right within the greet parent function. So here I'm going to do child. And now we are going to use the string interpolation. Change it to a backtick and a backtick. We are going to take in curly brackets. So I'm going to do child. Right here, I'm just going to place a comment on these. So having done this, let's check out the result on the browser. Click on the button. You are going to see welcome parent, I am child. And I want you to recall that this was passed as parameter from the child component down into the greet parent function. And the greet parent function is defined in the parent component. So this exactly is how to pass parameter when calling a function defined in the parent component from the child component. And please, I want you to take note of that because it appears mostly as an interview question. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. In this lecture, we are going to understand how state works in ReactJS. Alright, so let's assume you are building an application and you want to maintain a component's data that changes over time. For example, on click of a button, you want to change the title of your application to something else. Yeah, so that will be done with the useState hooks. Let's practicalize it quickly. So quickly create a new component called title component. Command B, right click on the components directory, hit on new file. Title components.js. Generate the functional component. So here is where the fun begins. After that, open up the app.js and then let's render the component right here. First, we have to import it. Import title component from component/title component. We also have to place a comment on this. Come here and then title component. Close it up with the soft closing tag. Head on to the title component. So the aim of this lecture is to change the title of our application when the button is clicked. So to maintain a component's data that changes over time, we have to make use of the useState hooks. So right at the top, we just have to import it. Place a comma right here, open and close curly brackets, and I'm going to do useState. The useState hook is a special function that takes the initial state as an argument and then returns an array of 2 entries. It is a function, so we have to invoke it. I'm going to do useState like this. And the initial state is going to be an empty string. We also mentioned that the useState hook returns an array of 2 entries. So right here, we are going to have const title, comma, set title. Assign it like this. So this variable over here is used to hold the initial state. And then this guy right here is a setter function that is used to update the initial state. And in this case, we are going to have the initial state to be ReactJS course for beginners. Having done this, let's display the initial state right within the h1 tag. h1, we are going to have a curly bracket, and then we just have to display the initial state, which is the title. Paste it here. Save. So this variable over here will be holding the initial state. When you save and check out the browser, here we go. Do you see that? Beautiful. So the intention of this lecture is to change the title of this application when a button is clicked. So here we are going to specify a button. So here I'm going to do change title. Beautiful. And here is it. So right now, when you click on the button, nothing happens. Let's quickly implement the on-click. On-click equal. We are going to take in an arrow function over here, and then we have to invoke the setter function, set title, which is this guy over here. And right within the setter function, we are going to pass in the new state. So here I'm just going to do so let's save and check it out on the browser. Let's give it a try by clicking the change title button. Can you see that? On click of the button, the title changed. Let's reload. Can you see? ReactJS course for beginners. And when I click on the button, we see Ultimate React Hooks course. This is indeed beautiful. And actually, this is just a glimpse of the useState hooks. Don't worry, in the future, we are going to discuss hooks in details. So to recap, whenever you want to handle data that changes over time, you definitely have to make use of the useState hooks. The useState hook is a function that takes in the initial state as an argument and then return an array of 2 entries. So right within this array, the first variable here is used to store the initial state. And then the second element in this array is a setter function that is used to update the initial state. So when the button is clicked, this function will be invoked, and then we are going to have a new state that is used to update the initial state. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. When working on a real-world project, definitely the application is going to have user interactions. So, when the user interacts with the application, events are triggered. For example, mouse click, mouse hover, key press, and many more. So, handling events with React elements is very similar to handling events with HTML DOM elements. But the difference is that React events are named using the comma case. So, for example, we are going to have onClick instead of onClick. And also, React event handlers are written inside the curly braces. Alright, let's practicalize it quickly. Open up the Explorer. Right within the components directory, we are going to create a new component. And this will be called clickEventHandler.js. RFC to generate the functional component. So right here, we are going to define a function. Function click handler. Right within the function, we are going to console log you clicked the action button. Right within the div, we are going to have the action button. All right. So the intention here is to teach you how the onClick event works. So right within the button, we are going to specify the onClick and then set it to a curly braces. So on click of this button, we want to trigger this function. And then here, I'm just going to do click handler. So having done this, we have to render this component right in the app.js. Highlight, place a comment on this, and then we are going to have click event handler. Close it up with the soft closing tag. Save on the browser. Alt-Command-I to open up the console. And now when we click on this button, the message would be logged into the console. Let's give it a try. Can you see? You clicked the action button. When you click again, the message would be logged twice. So that exactly is how to handle events in ReactJS. Alright, so go back to the code and let's highlight the common mistake that we beginners make with event handling. So sometimes you may like to do something like this, taking the parentheses. So when you include the parentheses, it becomes a function call. So let's see the behavior when you include the parentheses. First, I have to reload. Can you see? When you observe the console, you will realize that the message is logged in the console. So you do not need to click the button for this message to be logged. Can you see? Even if you click the button, nothing happens. You know why? When you specify the parentheses, it becomes a function call. So when you save the application and go back to the console, the function will be invoked immediately. Okay, and now let's try to take off the parentheses, save on the browser. Now we have to refresh. Can you see? Nothing is logged on the console. And now you have to click on the action button in order to log the message on the console. Point to take note of. When handling events, you do not need to specify the parentheses. When you do this, it becomes a function call. Event handler is not a function call. Alright, so it is just a function. Let's wipe it off. Save on the browser. Everything is working as expected. To recap, event handler in ReactJS is written in comma case, which implies you capitalized the first letter of every word except for the first word. And after that, you have to set it to a curly bracket. And right within the curly bracket, you just have to pass in the function. It's as simple as that. When building a real-world application, you will definitely find yourself in a situation where you have to render JSS based on certain conditions. Yeah, so we have 4 different approaches to solve this problem. And it includes the if-else statement, the element variable, ternary conditional operator, and the short circuit operator. But in this lecture, we are going to go with the most reliable and the approach that is widely used, which includes ternary conditional operator and the short circuit operator. Let's practicalize it quickly. Open up the Explorer. Right within the component, we are going to create a new component called userLogin.js. Generate the functional component. So right within the div, we are going to have a h1 tag, and I'm going to do welcome to Edubaba's project. And also we are going to have another h2 tag, and this will be you cannot access this project. So the idea is this: if the condition is true, we are going to display the h1 tag, and else if the condition is false, we are going to display the h2 tag. Let's quickly render this component in the app.js. Highlight and place a comment on it. Scroll up, and right here we are going to import user login from component/user login, and right here we just have to render it over here. Close it up with the soft closing tag and move back here. Let's quickly declare a variable over here, and then I'm going to do is logged in, set it to true. So let's proceed with the implementation. So first we have to wrap this up in a curly bracket. Command X to cut, open up the curly braces, come here and paste it. So right now I'm going to do if is logged in is true, we are going to display the h1 tag, and else we are going to display the h2 tag. On the browser, welcome to Edubaba's project. So if we change this to false, save, check it out, you cannot access this project. So everything is working perfectly fine as expected. Alright, so this is used to denote when the condition is true, and this is used to denote when the condition is false. Let me zoom up a little bit. Can you see? So this is used to denote when the condition is true. This is used to denote when the condition is false. It's as simple as that. So the next in line is the short circuit approach. So the short circuit approach is used when you want to render either something or nothing. Let's practicalize it quickly. So first we have to place a comment on this, highlight, hold down the command key, tap the /. To make use of the short circuit approach, so let's assume you want to display hello, I am logged in when the condition is true, and if the condition is false, we do not want to display anything. Okay, so I'm going to take in the curly bracket. So here I'm going to do is logged in &&, then we are going to have a h1 tag, and right within this tag I'm going to do hello, I am logged in. On the browser, nothing happens. You know why? It is simply because the condition is false. So when you change it to true, save, on the browser, hello, I am logged in. So the short circuit approach is used to render either something or nothing. So let me quickly explain to you how it works. So the short circuit approach will first evaluate the left hand side to check if the condition is true. And based on the true, see, the right hand side will be evaluated. So if is logged in is false, the right hand side will never be evaluated. React will ignore the right hand side, simply because we do not want anything to be displayed on the screen if the condition is false. So there won't be any need to evaluate the right hand side.
When you are building React application, one of the problems you will always have to solve is how to display a list of items on the screen. For example, you may be asked to display the list of products, employees, users, and so on and so forth. In ReactJS, the best way to display a list of items on the screen is by using the map method. The map method allows you to iterate over an array and modify its element using a callback function. The callback function will then be executed on each of the array's elements. Take note, map is not a feature of React. Instead, it is a standard JavaScript function that could be called on any array. Let's practicalize it quickly so that everyone will understand it well enough. Go ahead to create a new component. Right within the components directory, hit on New File. This will be called employeelist.js. Generate the functional component. Let's close down the Explorer. So right here, we are going to create an array of employees. Const employees equal open and close square bracket. And right within the array, we are going to have Daisy, comma, we are going to have Mike, comma, Joe, and lastly, we are going to have Angela. Notice that I used a plural word over here. It is indeed a good practice to always use a plural word when naming your array. Simply because an array is a collection of elements with a similar data type. So here we have several elements right within the array. Let's continue. Now, the major challenge over here is to display the list of employees on the browser. So, ordinarily, we can also do that using the array index. So, right within this div, we are going to have a h2 tag. So, right within the h2 tag, we are going to specify a curly bracket. And then, right within this bracket, we then have to access the element in the array. And of course, to access the first element in the array, we have to make use of array index of 0. So right now, I'm going to do employees, square bracket, 0. So this is going to retrieve the first element in this array. Highlight, duplicate it 3 times. And then to access the second element, we have to use index 1, index 2, and lastly, for the fourth element, index 3. Command P, let's head on to the app.js. And over here, we have to render the employees list. First, we have to import employee list from component/employees list. And down below, we just have to render the component over here. And then close it up with the soft closing tag. And on the browser, here are they. Now we have the list of employees displayed on the browser. Alright, so this approach may appear simple and working fine. Yeah, but it has a very huge drawback. Let me show you quickly. Back to VS Code, employees list. When you observe the screen, you will realize that it involves repetition of code. So let's imagine we have thousands of employees right within this collection. So it then means that we have to do this 1,000 times. We are going to have something like this by targeting the right index 1,000 times. This will make our code to be extremely noisy, and that won't be nice at all. So, following the best practices, we have to use the map method to perform iteration on the array. Alright, so let's quickly undo. Beautiful. So now we just have to clear off the h2 tag. Let's start from scratch. The map method is a JavaScript code that needs to be evaluated. Right, so we have to wrap it up in a curly bracket. The next in line is to call the map method on the array. Usually the syntax is array.map. So this exactly is the syntax. But in this case, the name of the array over here is employees. So I'm just going to do employees.map. The map method takes in a function as an argument. And in this case, an arrow function. Okay? And also, the arrow function takes in an argument which I'm going to call employee. So this employee over here represents each element in the array. Okay? You can decide to change the name of this argument, but I highly suggest you use a descriptive name that is relevant to the array you are iterating over. It's as simple as that. Alright, so right within the function body is where the transformation would take place. So for every employee, we are going to return a h2 tag with the employee as an inner HTML. Return, we are going to have a h2 tag, and right within the h2 tag, we are going to return the employee as an inner HTML, which is this argument over here that represents each element in the array. It's as simple as that. Save on the browser. Here are they. Beautiful. So this problem we just solved is quite simple. Let's pick a more complex scenario. Back to VS Code. In a real-world organization, employees' details will include employee's name, ID, phone number, and so on and so forth. Alright, so let's quickly make an employees object to include all of these details. Right within the square brackets, I'm just going to wipe off the elements and then hit the enter key like this. We are going to have an object right within the array. So right within this object, we are going to have the properties and its value. And in this case, the employee's details. We are going to have name, separate it with the comma. We are going to have gender, male, separate it with the comma. We are going to have country, UK. And lastly, we are going to have age. So you can choose to have as much as employees details as you like. But for me, I'm just going to stop here. So right outside the object, we are going to separate it with the comma. Now we are going to highlight and then duplicate it as many times as you like. But make sure to change the details, which is the values. So right here, I'm going to change these to Daisy. Sorry. Okay, this is going to be female. And here, we're going to do 19. So you just have to change the details at your end. And I'm done with mine. Can you see? Beautiful. Alright, so this approach is no longer going to work for this object. Simply because we are no longer dealing with string. So right here, I'm going to wipe off the h2 tag and then open and close parentheses. Right within the parentheses, we are going to have a h2 tag. And right within the h2 tag, we have to display the employee as an inner HTML. And in this case, the employee over here represents each object in the list. And to access the properties, we have to make use of the dot operator. And here I'm going to do employee dot name. So when we target the property, the value will be retrieved. It's as simple as that. Highlight, duplicate it 4 times. And we have some error over here. It says GSS expressions must have one parent element. Come here, we are going to have a parent div. So right within this div, highlight and then move the code in. So here we are going to have employee.gender, employee.country, and lastly, employee.age. Save on the browser. Can you see? Everything is displayed on the browser, functioning perfectly fine as expected. Now we have the list of employees on the screen, but there is another approach to do this just in one line. And that is with the use of string interpolation, which is object literals. Head on to VS Code and let's do that quickly. Let's get rid of everything here, wipe it off. Now, so we have to make the code clean a little bit. Perfect. So here we are going to have another h2, and right within the h2 tag, we are going to have a curly braces. Right within the curly braces, we are going to make use of the string interpolation. To do that, we just have to specify the backtick. And the backtick is located at the top left corner of the keyboard, right below the escape key. Here I'm going to do name. We're going to have a $sign, open and close curly bracket, and I'm going to do employee.name. Come here, and here we're also going to have a gender, employee.gender. We are going to have country, employee.country. And lastly, we are going to have age, employee.age. Save. All right, so let's quickly format this code with Prettier. Format document with Prettier. I think the code is looking pretty right now. So you can have a look. Do you see? Let me zoom out a little bit. And here is it. Take a look. Can you see? All right. Let's check it out on the browser. Can you see that? Everything is working perfectly fine as expected. I love it. Alright, so after mapping, another thing most developers do is to destructure the code. Let me quickly teach you how to do that. So to destructure the code, we are going to come here and then we can have a regular JavaScript function or even a component. So now I'm going to do const, open and close curly bracket. We want to destructure the name, comma, gender, comma, country, and age, and then assign it to the actual employee. It's as simple as that. So having done this, we no longer need to use the dot operator to access the properties. So now we will be able to access it directly. Come here, select employee dot, and then press hold the command key on your keyboard. Tap letter D to select all the occurrences of employees dot. It's as simple as that. And then wipe it off. Save. Press the escape key to disable the multi-cursor editing. And on the browser, there are these. Beautiful. And now the code looks more concise and more readable. I love it like this. Alright, so following the best practices, the next in line is to refactor the code. And by refactoring the code, I simply mean we should improve the structure of our code to enhance readability and maintainability. So the way to do that is to separate the logic from the presentation component. Let's do that quickly. So we do not want all the logic to be written over here. Okay, so we have to hide the logic in a separate component. Open up the Explorer. Right within the component directory, create a new file. And this will be called employee.js. Generate the functional component. Quickly go back to the employees list. Then we have to highlight from lines 33 to lines 38. Command X to cut, go back to employee, select from lines 4 to 6, wipe it off, and then Command V to paste. So having done this, we have to map through this component, which is the employees component. Go back to employees list, scroll up. So right at the top, we have to import employee from ./employee. Right below, we have to render it here. Close it up with the self-closing tag. So the next in line is to pass the details as probs. So right within the employee, we are going to have name equal employee dot name. We're going to have gender employee dot gender. And we have country equal employee dot country. And lastly, we have age equal employee dot age. All right, so we just have to format the code. Beautiful. We have succeeded in passing all of these details as probs down into the employee component. So the next in line is to receive the probs. So quickly head on to the employee. And first, we have to receive it by passing probs as parameter right within the function. And after that, we have to assign it to probs. Save. Check it out on the browser. Alright, we have a blank screen. Okay, go back to VS Code. Everything appears fine over here. Let's check out the employees list. Alright, so we have to take off the curly bracket. Wipe it off. Come here, wipe it off. And as well, take off the semicolon. Save on the browser. And there are these. Everything appears to be working perfectly fine. But when we inspect the console, take a look. We are going to see this annoying error over here that says each child in a list should have a unique key prob. Let's do that in the next lecture. See you then. Alright, so when you open up the console, you are going to see this annoying error over here. And it says, each child in a list should have a unique key prob. To resolve this problem, we just have to go back to the code and specify the key. So quickly head on to VS Code. The key must be something unique within the list. We are going to search for a property that can be used to uniquely identify each employee. So when you observe the list, you will realize that the name is quite unique. So the employees right within this list is got different names. We can then proceed to use the name as a unique key prob. Come here. So I'm going to do key equal employee dot name. When you save and check out the browser, can you see? The error is gone. Beautiful. Everything seems to be working perfectly fine, but it is not advisable to use the name as a unique key prob. You know why? It is simply because in a real-world organization, chances are you will have two different employees that bears the same name. So it is not proper to use name as a unique key prob. Let me show you quickly. Okay, here we have Edu Baba. So let's change this guy here to Edu Baba, because in a real-world organization, chances are two employees will bear the same name. So when you have something like this, there's going to be a conflict. Okay, so using the name as a key prob is not going to work anymore. Can you see? It says, encountered two children with the same key, Edu Baba. keys should be unique so that components maintain their identity across updates. So, the best way to solve this problem is to specify an employee ID. Simply because in a real-world organization, employees must have a unique ID. So every employee is got different ID. And that is the best way to specify the key probes. Come here, right on the list, we just have to specify the ID, make it 1, highlight, copy. Come here, paste, make it 2, paste, make it 3, and lastly, make it 4. So if you have more employees in the list, you can as well specify their IDs to match the number of employees. And right here, we are going to change it to ID. On the browser, let's quickly refresh the console. Can you see? Everything is working perfectly fine as expected. Another important point that I want you to take note of is that when specifying the unique key probes, it must be done at the top level. Go back to VS Code and let me show you quickly. So if I should wrap up everything in a parent div, highlight, hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, tap the up arrow key to move it in. And then when we save and go back to the browser, the key is not going to work any longer. Since each child in a list should have a unique key probe. It is simply because the key probes must be done at the top level. So I'm just going to highlight and then cut it off. Come here, right within the div, paste it. Alright, we just have to quickly format the code. Beautiful. On the browser, let's refresh the console. Can you see? Everything is working perfectly fine. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. In this lecture, we are going to learn how to style React components. There are several options to style React components. And these options includes regular CSS style sheet, inline CSS, CSS module, CSS in JS, styled component, and a lot more. In this lecture, we are going to stick with the first 3R approach. And now we will begin with the regular CSS style sheet. So quickly within the components directory, we are going to create a new component. Regular style sheet.js. I always make sure to use a descriptive name in naming my stuffs so that it becomes so easy for me to refer to them in the future. Close down the Explorer and then quickly generate the functional component. So right within the div, we are going to have a h1 tag. And right within the h1 tag, I'm going to do learning how to style React component. Alright, so let's quickly stylize the h1 tag. Open up the Explorer and quickly create a CSS file right within the components directory. And this CSS file would be called mystyles.css. Alright, so having created the CSS file, we have to stylize the h1 tag. Come here. First, to do that, we have to specify the class name. And I'm going to call it primary. Go to the CSS file. Here, we have to stylize the primary, which is the class name that will be used to reference the h1 tag. So right within the curly braces, we are going to specify the font size. Let's make it 50 pixels. The color, let's make it blue. And lastly, we just have to specify the font family. and I'm going to make it cursive. Alright, so the next in line is to link the CSS file with the component. Come here, right at the top, we are going to import ./mystyles.css. It's as simple as that. Open up the app component. So we have to place a comment on these. And quickly, let's quickly import regular style sheet from component/regular style sheet. And right here, we just have to render the regular style sheet. Close it up with the soft closing tag. Save on the browser, and here is it. Can you see that? Beautiful. Alright, so another thing you can also do is to conditionally apply a class based on props or states of the component. Let me show you quickly. So right here, we are going to have a prop primary equal, let's set it to true. Having done this, we have to receive the props right in the regular style sheet component. And we do that by taking props as parameter right within the function. Okay, now what I'm going to do is this. We are going to have a variable called class name. And then if props.primary is equal true, we are going to set the class name to primary. And else we are going to set the class name to secondary. It's as simple as that. So basically, the result of the operation on the right hand side will be stored on this variable. And now this variable will be used as the class name. So come here, highlight, wipe it off. Open and close curly brackets. And then we have to pass in the class name, which is this guy over here. So if props.primary is equal true, we are going to have the class name to be primary. And then we will stylize the primary. And else, if it is false, we are going to have the class name to be secondary. So all of these will be stored in a constant variable called class name. And then we dynamically pass it down here. Okay, so this over here is going to hold the primary when the condition is true. And it is going to hold the secondary when the condition is false. Go back to the CSS file. We have to stylize the secondary. I'm just going to copy everything from here down here. So we just have to change the color to tomato. And here, let's wipe off the font family. Save on the browser, and boom. Can you see? The condition is true. Therefore, we are going to have the primary being stylized. So when you come back here and change the condition to false, save on the browser, we are going to have something like this. Can you see how flexible it can be? Beautiful. So this is extremely helpful when you want to stylize component based on condition. Alright, so next is the inline CSS. Head on to VS Code. Let's quickly create a new component called inline.js. Let's generate the functional component. To achieve the inline styles, we just have to create an object and apply it to the style attribute. Let me quickly show you. As usual, we are going to have a h1 tag. Right within the h1 tag, I'm going to do. Alright, so using the inline CSS, we have to apply the style attribute. So here, I'm going to do style equal. Let's assume heading. Okay, so now we have to create an object of this heading and implement the style right within. Come here, I'm going to do const heading equal, set it to empty object. And right within this object, we have to implement the style. font size. So this is in form of key value pair, right? So I'm going to do 100 pixels, comma, color. I'm also going to do tomato. Beautiful. So I want you to notice that the font size is on comma case. So this exactly is how the inline styles work. Head on to the app.js. So we then have to import the inline from component/inline. Let's place a comment on the regular CSS, and then we have to render the inline.js. Close it up with the soft closing tag. Save on the browser, and boom. Alright, something is wrong somewhere. The style is not applied to the h1 tag. Alright, let's check out the inline. Oops, there is a typographical error over here. So we just have to make the necessary correction by deleting the T. So this is supposed to be style. Save, and boom. Everything is working perfectly fine as expected. One thing I want to discuss with you is that if you want to stylize another h1 tag, something like this, okay, let's make it a h2 tag this time around. So I'm going to give it a style attribute. Now we have to create another object for the h2 tag. So here we are going to do const, let's call it heading 2. We are going to have the font size to be 50 pixels. Color. Okay, let's make it blue. Having done this, we have to apply the style by referencing it over here. Paste, save on the browser, and boom. Can you see? So when using the inline style, you have to create a different object for the attribute that you want to stylize. This is all for now, and in the next lecture, we are going to discuss the CSS module. See you in the next lecture.
CSS modules are CSS files in which all class names and animations are locally scoped by default, which simply implies it cannot be used outside its domain. And this is very helpful to avoid conflict in CSS. So, to explain it well enough, we have to make use of the regular CSS style sheet and compare it with the CSS module. So quickly open up the Explorer, and then right within the SRC, we have to create the regular CSS style sheet, appstyles.css. And also right within the SRC, we now have to create the CSS module. And I'm going to call it my appstyles dot, take note of the convention, module.css. This exactly is how to name your CSS module. So let's go back to the regular style sheet. Right in the regular style sheet, we are going to have an error class. And I'm going to stylize it by specifying the color to be red. Simple and short. So right within the CSS module, we are going to have a success class. And of course, the color is going to be green. It's as simple as that. Let's head on to the app.js. So right within the app.js, we have to import the regular CSS style sheet, appstyles.css. The next in line is to import the CSS module, and the import is quite unique. So we have to specify a name. In this case, I'm going to call it module styles. So we have to import it from /my appstyles.module.css.
So this exactly is how to import CSS module. Let's make use of the CSS files. So first, okay, let's place a comment on the inline component. So right below, we are going to have a h2 tag whose class name is equal error. So this class name over here is this guy over here. All right. And then I'm going to do error. When you save on the browser, you are going to have here error. So let's quickly implement these for the CSS module. I'm going to have a h2 tag. We are going to have the success and then specify the class name. So the class name is going to be module styles dot success. So this module style over here is the name that we used in referencing the module style CSS. So now we are going to say module style dot the success class itself that was defined over here. It's as simple as that. Okay, let's quickly save and see what we've got. Can you see? Beautiful. And now here exactly is where the fun begins. Go back to VS Code and let me show you. Head on to the app.js and then let's uncomment the inline.js. Save. On the browser, these are the style coming from the inline.js. Yeah? Now let me show you something. This h2 tag is for the regular CSS style sheet. So if I copy this and paste it over here, right in the inline, okay, we can do it like this. And over here, I'm going to say error from inline. Okay, so that we will be able to differentiate it. Can you see? Error from inline. And as well, we have the error from the app component. I want you to pay attention over here. Go back to the app.js. And then when I copy the CSS module and paste it right within the inline CSS, like this, when you save, on the browser, we are going to encounter an error. And it says, module style is not defined. This exactly is what we are talking about. CSS modules are CSS files which all class names and animations are locally scoped by default. So when you have a CSS module defined over here, you cannot use it in a different component because it is locally scoped. Understood? Beautiful. So when we take it off and save, can you see? Everything is working perfectly fine. And the advantage of the CSS module is that it allows the scoping of CSS by automatically creating a unique class name of the format. Secondly, the CSS modules let you use the same CSS class name in different files without having to worry about the name clashes. That exactly is a great feature. This is all for now, and hope you understand what the CSS modules are. Take care. In this lecture, we are going to discuss how to work with form in ReactJS. We will learn how to capture data from the form element and then make the captured data available for submission. In regular HTML, form elements are all responsible on their own to handle the user input and update the values respectively. But right here, we want React to handle and control the form element. And so, such form element whose value is controlled and handled by React is called controlled component. Let's quickly proceed by creating a new component. Right within the component directory, we are going to create a component forminput.js. Generate the functional component. So I'm just going to wipe this off. We are going to have a form. Right within the form, we are going to have a div. And right within the div, we are going to have a label. So here I'm going to do name. And here I'm going to have the input type equal test. Close it up with the soft closing tag. So ordinarily, this is just a basic HTML input. But in React, we have to convert this input into a controlled input. So to do that, we have to follow 3 steps. Step 1 is to import the useState hook and declare the state variable that will control the form input. So let's quickly import the useState hook. And over here, we have to declare the state variables to be used. And in this case, we're going to have const. Right within the array, we are going to have name, comma, and the setter function that will be used to update the name. So the initial state is going to be an empty string. Alright, so having done this, let's display the value dynamically. Here I'm going to do value equal, take a look. This is supposed to be name. And here I'm going to do name. Let's open up the app component. Make sure to place a comment on all of these stuffs over here. At the top, we have to import form input from component/form input. And right below, we have to render the form input. Save on the browser and boom. Let's push it up a little bit like this. Nice. So this exactly is what we have on the browser. But for now, when you type into the text field, nothing happens. You know why? It is simply because we have to specify the onChange so as to update the value when the state changes. Right on the VS Code, onChange equal, we are going to take in an arrow function over here. We have to call the setName function to update the initial state. So the onChange will give access to the event. And with the help of the event object, we are going to grab the new value that the user would type in. So to grab the new value, we are going to do event.target.value, which is the current value that you are typing into the text field. So this value over here is going to update the initial state. Save and let's give it a try. Alright, now my mouse is right in the input field and I'm going to do Irubaba. Everything is working perfectly fine as expected. So to understand how the onChange works, we have to console log the name. So right here, I'm going to do console.log name. Save on the browser. So let's quickly inspect the console. Right now, we do not have anything right in the input field. And as well, the console is empty. So it is assumed that we have an empty string. So when I key in something like this, can you see? Now we have E on the console and we have E over here right in the input field. Can you see? So this exactly is how the onChange event is triggered in order to call the setter function to update the initial state. So this is the setter function that will be used to update the initial state. And with the help of this event, we will be able to grab whatever the user is typing into the input field and then use it to update the initial state. It's as simple as that. Alright, I talk too much. So let's continue. Let's quickly declare more state variables. highlight and duplicate it twice. Let's change this to address. We have to set address, and this is going to be skill. Set skill. The initial state of this field is going to have ReactJS like this. Okay, because we want to make it more like a select box. So come here, highlight from lines 10 to lines 18. Duplicate it twice. Alright, so for this, we are going to change this to address. The value is going to be address, which is the initial state. So we have to call address. Come here. So over here, things is going to change. Highlight from lines 29 to 35. Now we are going to have a different label. Right within the label, I'm going to do scale. We are going to have a select. Right within the select, we are going to have the options. Specify the value, React. So here I'm going to do ReactJS. Highlight, duplicate it 3 times. Here I'm going to have Angola. So here we're going to have Vue.js. Like this. Alright. So lastly, we have to specify the on-click as well. So right within the select, I'm going to specify the value. The value is going to be scale, which is the initial state. And then the onChange is going to be equal to, we're going to take in an anonymous function over here, which will give access to the event. And then we are going to call the setScale function to update the initial state. And then let's target and grab the new input. e.target.value. That's simple as that. When you save on the browser, let's see if the select option is working. Can you see? Beautiful. Everything is working perfectly fine. I love this. Alright, so lastly, we have to specify the button to submit the form. Alright, where do we do this now? Okay, let's have another div over here. And right within this div, we are going to have a button. Button type is going to be submit. Value, submit. So here I'm going to do save. Boom. Everything is working nicely. Alright. Finally, we have to define a function for the button. So let's scroll up quickly. And then let's do it right here. Const handle submit equal. Here we are going to take in event. Set it to our function. So to avoid automatic page refresh, we have to call the prevent default. So I'm going to do evt dot prevent default. And finally, when the button is clicked, we want the value in the input field to appear in the alert dialog. So here we are going to make use of the string interpolation. First, we have the name. We have the address. And lastly, we have the skill. Alright, so now we have to invoke this function right within the form. To do that, first, we have to specify the onSubmit. And then I'm going to do handle submit. It's as simple as that. When you save on the browser, let's check it out. Okay, I do React, so let's hit on the submit button. Take a look. Can you see? The input appears right here on the alert dialog. So to recap, when you are creating form in ReactJS, you have to convert the form into a controlled component. And to do that, first, you have to import the useState hook and then declare the necessary state variables to be used. After that, you have to specify the input and then take in the initial state as the value. So having done this, we have to specify the onChange. Alright, so let's format the code. Beautiful. Can you see? This exactly is how to work with form in ReactJS. This is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care. In this lecture, we are going to discuss fragments. A common pattern in React is for a component to return multiple elements. So, fragments allows us to group a list of children elements without adding extra node to the DOM. Let's understand it well enough with an example. So quickly within the components directory, we are going to create a new package called Fragments Demo. Frag demo. And right within the frag demo, we are going to create a new component called demo fragment. Right click, new file, demo fragment.js. Generate the functional component. Press the escape key to disable the multi-cursor editing. Then here, I'm just going to wipe this off. Alright. Let's replace the div with a h1 tag. Now I'm going to highlight the div, Command D to multi-select the div. Wipe it off. And now we are going to do h2. Press the escape key again to disable the multi-cursor editing. And right here, we are going to have fragment example. Alright, so let me show you something. Here we are going to have a h1 tag again. Alright, let's do it this way. Can you see? If you observe the screen, you will realize that the application is complaining. And when you hover your mouse on it, it says JSS expressions must have one parent element. So the application demands we should wrap up the JSS expression in one parent element. So quickly, we are going to do it over here. A div. Let's give this div a class name of container. Highlight, press down the Alt key and then tap the up arrow key to move it in. Beautiful. Save. Let's quickly render the components in the app.js. Scroll to the top, and over here, we are going to import demo fragments from component/fragdemo/demo fragments. And right below, place a comment on this. We are going to render demo fragment. Close it up with the soft closing tag. Make sure to save the application, and on the browser, boom. Can you see? Everything is working perfectly fine as expected. But when you inspect the element, right click, inspect. Let me show you something. Open up the body. And right within the body, you are going to see a div with the ID of root. Open. And right within this div, you are going to see another div with the class name of app. Let's open. And right within this div as well, you are going to see another div with the class name of container. Look, we have so many parent nodes over here, and these could slow down the performance of our application. Alright, so when you open up this div over here with the class name of container, you are going to see the h2 tag. But the problem is this. This div with the class name of container is needed to wrap up the JSS expressions. Alright, so it serves as the parent node to these JSS elements. But the issue here is that we have so many parent elements right over here, and that could slow down the performance of our application. What we are going to do right now is to remove this div. So the only way we can do that is with the use of React Fragment. Head on to VS Code, open up the demo fragment. So we have to wipe off the div. Can you see? The application is complaining. Now, what I'm going to do is to replace the div with React.Fragment. Highlight, press down the Alt key on your keyboard, tap the up arrow key to move it in. And don't forget, we have to format the code. Beautiful. So let's inspect the element. Can you see? Right over here, you are going to see a div with the class name of app. And previously, right within this div, you have another div with the class name of container, which serves as an extra node. But now, we do not have such over here. So the extra node that was added is gone. This exactly is the beauty of React Fragment. Okay, so it helps to remove extra node and improve the performance of your application. So let's quickly take another example. Open up the Explorer. Right within the frag demo, we are going to create a component called mytable.js. Generate the functional component. So let's replace the div with a table. Right within the table, we are going to have the table body. And right within, we are going to have the table role. So right within the table role, we are going to have the table column. But in this case, the column will be maintained in a separate component. Quickly, let's create the column component. Right-click on Frag Demo, New File, mycolumn.js. RFC to generate the functional component. Close down the Explorer. So right within this div, we are going to have the table data. And here I'm going to have skill, highlight, duplicate it. So here I'm going to have ReactJS. So head on to the app component. We have to render my table. First, just have to place a comment on this. Scroll up. Let's import my table from component/fragdemo/mytable. And at the bottom, we have to render my table.js. Close it up with the self-closing tag. Save. Having done this, we have to render the column component right within the T row, which is the table role. So first, we have to import my column from my column. Of course, it is in the same directory. So here we have to render my column. Save on the browser and boom. Here is it. Beautiful. And again, let's quickly inspect the element. Open up the body, the div with the ID of root. We have another div with the class name of app. And then we have the table body, the table role, and now we have an extra node that is added to the tree, which is this div over here. Open. And right within this div, we have the table data. So when you inspect the console, you are going to see some annoying error over there. Can you see? It says validate DOM nesting. TD cannot appear as a child of a div. Let me show you in the column. You see this guy over here? It cannot appear as a child of a div. So the only way to solve this problem is to replace the div with a fragment. Now we're going to come here, Command D to select all the occurrences of div. Wipe it off, and I'm going to do react.fragment. Save. On the browser, we have to refresh the console. Take a look. The error is gone. Isn't this beautiful? I love it. Alright, let me take you to the elements. Come here. Now, when you inspect the elements, the extra node that was added to the DOM tree is gone. So here we have the T-body, T-role, and TD. Can you see? So this is exactly the point you have to take note of when working with table. Okay, so the TD cannot appear in a div. Rather, we have to enclose the TD element in a React fragment. It's as simple as that. There is a shorter syntax you can use for declaring fragments. And the syntax looks like this. You just have to select react.fragment, Command D to select all the occurrences, wipe it off. So the empty tag you see over here is another way of writing React fragment. When you save, on the browser, the result looks exactly the same. So the key point I want you to take note of is that when using the empty tag as a React fragment, you cannot pass the key attribute to it. The key attribute can only be passed with react.fragment. Let me show you quickly. Can you see? The key attribute is the only attribute that can be passed to a react.fragment. So when you do something like this using the empty tag as fragment, it is not going to work for you. So the key point to take note of is that key is the only attribute that can be passed to a fragment. And in the future, they may add some support for the addition of attribute. For now, key is the only attribute that can be passed to a React fragment. Point number 2. Fragments declared with explicit react.fragment syntax is the only kind of fragment that can take the key attribute. Okay, so this is all for now. See you in the next lecture. Stay focused and always take care.
I want to say congratulations simply because you are done with React fundamentals. So now it is extremely important to move on with advanced topics. And then we are going to build so many applications that will blow your mind. And trust me, when you showcase these applications that we are going to build, you will definitely get hired as an intermediate developer or a junior developer. So, I deeply advise you use the link in the description box below to enroll for the full course. And good news, the first 1,000 students that will enroll with the link below will get complete 30 days free to enjoy the entire course. You don't have to pay a dime to enroll. So you just have to quickly use the link below to be among the lucky students. And I want to use this opportunity to wish all my students a better chance ahead. Quickly enroll and let's get started.